Well, the idea of this webinar is to suggest as well as to improvise on the standard operating procedure related to operating on COVID-19 suspect or positive patients. Well, if you have any comments or suggestion, please you can type it on a chat box or you can raise your hand. And at the end of the session, if you want to clarify on any point, you can just type C and we can unmute your mic. So till then time, I will request all of you to unmute your mic so that this particular session is not disturbed anyway. Before I start, let me begin with a disclaimer. Due to the lack of scientific evidence, guidelines cannot be formulated on this topic. Hence, they should serve as a standard operating procedure and based on the recommendations from various societies and experiences from the hospitals involved in the care of COVID. The objective of this SOP is to serve with caution. And as you can see in each slide, on the bottom, there is a slide number written. So if in case you want to refer to any of this slide, you can note down the slide number and we can get back to you. On the right top hand of the each slide, there is a lamp shadow, as you can see in the first slide here. This lamp shadow will suggest that this particular slide will not be a part of the recommendation, which will be writing down on a paper. The slide which does not have this lamp show, like this one, will be represented in the guideline or the SOP, which will be formed later. So to begin with, again, these are the references from which I have taken most of these recommendations from. So primarily was the Handbook of COVID-19 Prevention and Treatment from Chinese Hospital. Then it was the Nepal Medical Council guidelines on the use of protective equipments. Then there was a recent publication, it just published in March 6, online publication on what to do in a COVID-19 patients who needs an operation. Then there are various guidelines from ANS, CNS, and SBNS, as well as ENS. Well, the concern for us is right now, if you see the doubling time of COVID positive patients, it's fairly increasing at a massive rate. Over the last 1 week, the number of the COVID positive patients have risen from 12 to 31, which is really something which is to be much more concerned about. But there's always a silver lining to it. The silver lining is that we have two patients who have got completely cured, and there's no patients who is in ICU or under ventilation for this matter. So this means that the patient we do not have till date a severe patient of COVID-19 disease as such. But this rising number of positive patients of concern, so we should be ready with a protocol as well as the modus operandi on working on these patients if the need arise be. Well, the need of promulgating such type of SOP is basically to identify the need that the surgical emergencies may arise in COVID-19 patients, either a suspect or a probable or a positive patients. So this definition of a suspect, probable and positive has been well defined by WHO guideline. Just to give you a brief overview, suspect is those patients who are clinically positive. So if, for example, a patient is having fever, or a patient is having cough or a sore throat, or patient having respiratory distress, or has a history of a travel to locally transmissible communities like USA, Canada, UAE, other countries. Whereas probable are those patients where the tests have not been thoroughly positive. Say, for example, maybe his rapid antibody kit test has become positive, but his PCR is still awaited for. Or in patients with a confirmed positive, say, for example, who are PCR proven. So those patients have to be considered as a COVID-19 patients until unless proven otherwise. So they are being managed in isolated ward and ICU, and such patients can generate aerosols by undergoing various procedures, including neurosurgical ones, both at the brain as well as over the spine, and that increases the risk of transmissions of the SARS-CoV-2 V2 viruses. And such patients cannot be operated in routine OR, nor can be kept in a routine ICU. Henceforth, special isolation precautions have to be adopted by all healthcare workers. So because of this need, this particular SOP has to be defined and to be enacted as soon as possible by all the stakeholders. Now, if we see the guidelines or the recommendations given by CDC, it says that we have to limit the transport and movement of the patients outside of the room where these patients are kept, and these patients are basically kept in a closed room. According to the CDC, negative pressure is not required. However, if you are performing any aerosol generating procedure, that is AGP, in these patients, then it has to be conducted in airborne infection isolation rooms, or AIIRs, which are negative pressure rooms. Now the problem is that these negative pressure rooms are hardly available neither in Nepal or nor in India, and even very specific places in developed countries. However, if we see the guideline as given by the American Society of Hospital Care Engineers, they say that in COVID-19 patients, you have to use the same guidelines as to be used for an active tuberculosis patients. So we have to perform these patients and after hours, after we have finished the routine cases, or there are no other non-COVID-19 positive patients within the suite, and develop a dedicated COVID-19 operating room and procedure room, which is much more better, so as to exclude these patients from the other non-COVID-19 patients, minimize opening of the doors, as well as terminal cleaning only after necessary number of air changes has occurred to remove potentially infectious particles. Now, if we see, these protocols are very stringent and maybe may not be practical in our scenario. I was listening to the webinar, which was the recorded version was posted by Dr. Gopal in the Nesson Viber group also. Well, they are actually talking of various other things, and they have also admit to this fact that the negative air pressure OTs are difficult to manage. PPPRs or powered air purifying respirators like this one is very expensive and very non-available in our part of the world. I don't think so in Nepal anybody may be having a PPPR as such, but then this may be because of my ignorance. But this is something which has to be done if in case has to be applied if in case one is doing a procedure which generates an aerosol. Well, N95 mask is basically a balance or a thing which we can get through if in case we do not have these type of PAPRs. But then surgical N95 mask has to be a well-fitted mask, and there are various techniques including the 3M company which makes this type of standardized N95 masks advises to do a both qualitative and a quantitative test at least once in a year for all the health practitioners who are using this N95 mask. So a very good test which they have mentioned as once you have put on the N95 mask, you should not be smelling sweet smells or bitter smells if in case they are put near to your nose. If in case that particular test is okay, this is known as fit test, FIT, fit test, then only you can say that the N95 is properly fit. Particularly those people who are keeping beards like Dr. Praveen right now, N95 mask would be very difficult to put on. So this particular beard or the mustaches can generate a lot of air leaks. So it is not advisable to put on N95. If in case somebody is putting on these types of beards, then it is advisable to use a PAPR devices to operate in these patients. Well, we have generated a little bit of SOPs for these patients and have circulated in my team also in Kathmandu Medical College, and like to share with you. Well, COVID-19 patients should be managed according to the Ministry of Health Nepal policy for managing COVID-19 patients. The surgical team on call, which basically we have decided in our places to be separate from the ones on duty. So the person who is looking after the routine patients, they do not go to look after these COVID-19 patients if they are suspected or probable or proven. They have to confirm the need of the surgical intervention. They have to consult the anesthesia for OT and ICU management, alert the hospital director and nursing in charge of such intervention, and also arrange team huddle. So when I say team huddle, this is not a physical huddling. This is basically discussion about the procedure, what all equipments are required, so that everything should be arranged beforehand, and to avoid any need of separate equipments during the OT, because that may prolong the procedure, as well as the chances of lot of movements inside the theater that can again cause lot of disruption. And plus, in this particular COVID-19 scenario, we have to take appropriate consents, because those non-COVID-19 patients can also develop COVID-19 positivity because of this pandemicity. We are not knowing about the local transmission rate in our population, hence for this risk is always there. So we have to take a separate consent in these scenarios to the patients who are being operated. A separate designated OT have to be used, where the discussion I'm going to talk about this specification later. Healthcare workers should be wearing appropriate category of PPE all the time. So those people who are inside the theater should be wearing the category 1 PPE according to the Nepal Medical Council. Those people who are not in direct contact with the patient can use PPE category 3. But those people who are contacting the patients but they're not involved in aerosol generating procedure like suctioning the tube or doing chest physiotherapy, they can just do away with the category 2 PPE of the Nepal Medical Council's guideline. The patient should be mobilized only after all arrangements are ensured, and we have to keep the time possible outside the isolation as minimum as possible. Regarding the staffing in the theater, it should be as minimal as required. Only the essential ones should be allowed, including the anesthesiologist team. They should not be roaming around inside the theater. Only those people who are required should be there inside. We should stop the positive pressure ventilation inside the OR if there is no HEPA filter or no HVAC installed. HVAC means heating, ventilation, and air conditioned devices, which has an inbuilt mechanism of filtering the air inside. So if in case that is there, then we don't have to stop it. But if in case we are using some standalone air conditioning system like a split AC or a cabinet AC, that needs to be switched off because they actually recirculate the air inside the room, which is not good in these scenarios. And we have to keep our exhaust open. Try avoid procedures which generate aerosols like drilling or using them sparingly with constant suctioning. Even using cautery can generate smoke, and which can be an aerosol generating procedure. So if in case we are using cautery, we have to be irrigating the field as much as possible, and we have to keep a smoke extraction as much as possible devices nearby so that the negative pressure can be used. If in case we can keep a potable HEPA filter and create a negative pressure inside the room, that is again helpful, but then the efficacy of this system is not much proven. We have to try and avoid endoscope or laparoscope, which can generate aerosols like drilling inside the sinuses as much as possible. Only in very undeniable situations should be performed, and if performed, then you should be putting on a PAPR. Consideration should be given to surgical approaches that could decrease operative staff exposure and shorten the case duration. Patients should be intubated and, if possible, extubated inside the designated OR. We have to keep all equipments, laptops or computers covered with plastic sheets so that they can be easily cleaned off, and try to use separate stationaries inside the OT theater. Do not bring your own pens inside the theater. So once you have used something inside the theater, that has to be discarded after the use. That corridor through which the patient is shifted be disinfected after the use, and post-operative patient should be kept in isolation as was the one startingly brought in inside the theater. Now, just a few words about dedicated COVID OR. Well, the room should be out of traffic area, so we should be selecting that OR if in case it's a medical college or a big hospitals, which is very much excluded or very much less often visited area, and should have an ideally a negative pressure with HEPA filter operating room, which is very difficult to achieve. However, in those places which have HVAC, which I will talking about, we can even generate these type of facilities. Ensure temperature and humidity and pressure as in a normal operating room. Switch off positive pressure ventilation inside COVID OR if in case we do not have, if that is causing a risk. So those ORs which have boxes or lockers inside the operating room, the try to keep only one door so that use as a buffer room for donning and doffing of the personal protective equipment, things or materials ready on a trolley. All surgical staff entering the OR necessary items into the operating theater, and all traffic in and out of the operating theater should be minimized. A dedicated floor nurse should be appointed as a OR runner to transfer all required material from the operating room to the NT room. Then a little bit concept about positive and negative pressure room, because this was heavily debated in our executive Viber group. So positive pressure rooms is supposed to maintain a high pressure inside the treatment area than the surrounding environment. So air can leave the room without circulating back inside the room. So that's why it tries to keep the airborne particle which originates in the room to be filtered out. A low air pressure to allow the outside air to come inside the room. That's why it creates a segregated environment to keep all this negative airborne particles into one tight space. This traps and keeps the potentially harmful particles within the negative pressure room, and it isolates the patient with infectious conditions. So this is a concept which is not widely available even in the developed countries, but then we have to do it because COVID-19 has been shown to spread not only through aerosol to droplets but also through aerosols. So some specifics which can be adapted in RORs. So we try to keep at least 12 airflow changes each hour. So this can be confirmed particularly with the engineers who are looking after HVAC systems inside the OR. Usually a lot of most of the good ORs in our Nepal hospitals have HVAC systems. So we can ask them to keep an ideal airflow rate of around 25 changes per hour. If in case that is not there, we have to maintain this particular thing depending on the size of the room and the purpose of the surgery. HEPA filters, particularly in good corporate hospitals, are already there established. So HEPA filters helps to control the movement of the airborne contaminants. And we have to have a self-closing entryway so that it creates a lot of seal. Thoroughly sealed floors, ceiling and walls and windows should be adapted. Fans and ductworks should be there to move air inside the desired direction, that is outside the theater. A monitoring system should allow the users to adjust pressure when necessary, and intermediate environment between the pressure room and outside environment for deliveries and protective gear storage, that is the empty room concept. So this is a small concept of two different models. On the left side is the HVAC system, which has an inbuilt HEPA filter. So you can see the blue line showing the air coming from outside, or the recirculated air which has been cleaned through HEPA filter as well as exposed to ultraviolet radiation. So this system, if in case it is inbuilt, then it's okay. You don't have to change anything. This will actually make it sure that the air which is circulating inside the theater is it's well cleaned. However, if we do not have this system, we do not have an HEPA filter installed in HVAC system, we have to ask for a damper. The damper is placed between the fresh air intake and the return air exhaust, as you can see on the right side of the screen. So this is another model in which is usually installed in most of the hospitals in Nepal. We can ask the engineer to put a damper between the fresh air intake and the return air exhaust. So the idea in this type of system, where this does not have an inbuilt HEPA filter system or a UV light radiation system inside for the cleaning mechanism of the internal air, is to let the fresh air come inside the OR and let all the air from the OR go out. So by this way, we will try not to recirculate the air inside the OR and prevent reinfection to the people inside. Now, what cases should be operated during this period? So I've seen through many of the recommendations, and what I feel is that it can be divided into emergency conditions, urgency conditions, or routine cases. So emergency conditions are those conditions which poses an immediate threat to life, as well as can cause permanent disability if in case not operated immediately. So that can be like intracranial conditions of neurotrauma, malignancy, or vascular, or in spinal pathologies which causes a compression leading to rapid tetra or paraparesis. So rapidly evolving intracranial hypertension or deteriorating state of consciousness, ruptured aneurysm, progressive or severe neurologic deficits due to neurological compression of any cause, spinal instability at risk of causing neurological injury, epidural abscesses, or post-operative wound infections. Well, I was listening to NSI webinar yesterday, and Dr. Muthukumar was suggesting an idea that in cases of ruptured aneurysm, coiling is, rather than clipping, one should go for coiling because it exposes the surgeon to the less of the aerosol generation. So that is one idea being put forward by Dr. Muthukumar from the NSI. Regarding the urgent indications, so these are those indications where we can wait for some time, but then these patients also require surgery at the earliest. Idea of differentiating between emergency and urgency condition is to allow time to investigate the patient. So now this protocol is basically for the COVID suspect or positive or a probable patients. So if in case we have a short of PPE and we do not know whether whether the facilities of all these which you're talking about will be available to us or not. In that scenario, if this patient turns out to have an urgent clinical condition, then we can ask for a PCR evaluation of these patients, and if proven negative, then we can go ahead with the surgery with minimal necessities rather than going for all these stringent precautions. So urgent indications are patients with pathology like intracranial tumors or bleed with mass effect, or with progressive neurological deficits, cervical or thoracic myelopathy due to spinal stenosis. So this is spinal stenosis. In the emergency condition, it was instability. Spinal infections, persistent significant neurological deficits, congenital defect surgeries like meningomyelocele, open peripheral nerve injuries where we need to do an end-to-end repair immediately, or spinal conditions causing intractable pain despite of giving all sort of medical managements. Battery changes for spinal or deep brain or epilepsy stimulators or pumps, as well as symptomatic carotid diseases. So these are urgent conditions. Then we can go ahead with elective surgeries only after this pandemic season is over and the government gives us a note to go ahead. Why elective surgery should ideally be postponed is because as per the directive of government of Nepal, we have to conserve on the consumables as well as to minimize the exposure of the staff and the patients to the SARS-CoV-2 and to decrease the crowding in hospitals. So we have to stop the elective surgeries for this moment of time. A slide regarding why we should not operate on the patients on a routine manner. This publication from China has proven without any doubt that operating in these types of pandemic where we are not aware of the local transmission as such, where maybe the local transmission may be higher, we are exposing these patients to develop COVID positivity, as in this patient where all the patients, 34 of them, who underwent surgery got positive for COVID later, and of which 20.5% patients died. Henceforth, these patients should not be operated upon as a waiting cases as much as possible. Well, the most important other thing is to huddle with the anesthesiologist. So anesthesiologist should be told about various other aspects of operating on these patients, like transferring through dedicated corridors, reducing aerosol generating procedure to the shortest. So henceforth, the most senior person or the person who are experienced with intubation procedures should be allowed to intubate the patient rather than allowing it for the junior people to try and intubate, and then use PPAR or plastic boxes or a video laryngoscopy, which most of the doctors in Nepal have been promoting in the last few days, can be tried on to intubate the patients. We should try to avoid awake intubations as much as possible, because that can generate cough as well as droplets during the act of procedure, as well as try to reduce the chances of disconnection of anesthesia circuit while trying to bagging the patients. Pre-oxygenation should be done with a well-fitted mask, and rapid sequence anesthesia or induction should be done to reduce the need of bag and mask ventilations, because bag and mask ventilations means that there may be a lot of leaking of the air from the surrounding the mask, and that can cause aerosol generations and spread inside the theater. Well, I can see other participants also. Yeah. Okay, so beside this, other than that, we should also ask for an ET tube which has a continuous inline suction mechanism, and so these patients will have less of the aerosol generation outside the ET tube pathway. Then extubation should be smooth. Patient should not cough as much as possible, and avoid Venturi type mask while trying to oxygenate these patients. Well, I have taken a lot of things from this particular slide as regarding the plan of action uh, while transferring the patients inside the theater as well as intra-op and post-op phases. Due to copyright issues, we will not be able to keep this slide, as well as there are a lot of things missing in this slide, even like what should be the surgeons do during the operation. And since we do not have an OR runner, we have to use the floor nurse for this purpose, as well as there are a lot of specific things which are written in this slide which may not be adaptable to our scenario. So I have made this particular chart, a chart of action, which is grossly based on the slide which I just showed before. Well, the most important thing to understand is that it starts from the transfer phase. So the nurse in charge who is looking after the patient in the isolation or in the ICU of the COVID-19 positive or suspected patient should activate the team once the surgical team gives a call to operate in these patients. So they should activate the patient, they should activate the team, and then they should be informing the security to clear the passages, as well as inform the OT. Meanwhile, the OT nurse, particularly the floor nurse, they should try to arrange the COVID OR, arrange the equipment and the trolley consumable as well as PP. But then this should not be done. This arrangement should not be done inside the COVID OR. It should be done in the NT room. That is the buffer room, which is just outside the COVID OR. Only the scrub nurse who is going to scrub inside the OR should prepare the OR table inside the OR. She should scrub and then wear the category 1 PPE plus or minus PAPR powered air purifier devices, which in case it is required. And then the person takes that particular trolley inside the COVID OR. Meanwhile, the anesthesiologist should first of all try to prepare their cart of intubation and other consumable items which may be required. They should be wearing the category 1 PPE as well as PAPR. Meanwhile, the OT technician should check all the equipments, whether they are functioning or not, and then also wear the appropriate PPE during the procedure, as well as setting up the equipments. Meanwhile, the surgeon should try to first of all screen all the things which is required, and then try to fill the sign-in or the safety checklist which is to be done in all the patients in these scenarios even. Then we should at least keep half an hour before we shift the patients to the OR, so that we can. The problem here is so And then in the inside the OR during the preparation phase, once the patient is shifted to the OR, it should be done only after all the preparation has been done. And then the handover should be done to the floor nurse. The floor nurse should identify the patient and start the surgical safety checklist preparation again. And then after performing the sign in, then only the anesthesiologist should intubate the patient inside the OR. Well, in the slide which was provided by the Lee et al, T et al, actually talks of intubation room. Most of the OR inside Nepal does not have an intubation room, so that's why intubation should be done inside the OR as much as possible. And only the equipments which are required inside the theater should be put inside the COVID-19 room. During the intraoperative phase, well, things starts after the surgical checklist is done. Meanwhile, since the patient is being transferred to the OR table, the trolley should be cleaned by the OT technicians. And then the floor nurse is allowed to move only inside through the OR. And then all the requested items should be kept on a trolley inside the NT room. In the post-operative phase, all the we have to first of all activate the security for transferring the patients to the appropriate place, either the ICU or the post or the isolation room, through all the consumable or the used specimens, and the specimen handling should be appropriate, and then extubation should be done in the OR until unless it is not possible. And then we have to designate where the patient to be shifted, and then through all the used consumable items and finish all the entries before the patient leaves the OR. And then the surgical teams also perform the sign out and finishes all documents before the patients leaves the OR. Sometimes the surgeons may like to look at the patient's pupil. So these all procedures has to be done inside the theater so that the patients are not touched again once the patient's moved out. And then all the disinfection protocol, which I'll be discussing in the next slide, should be followed. And then in the NT room, we have to remove the gowns, gloves, caps, and shoe covers. And then outside the NT room, we have to remove the N95, goggles, caps, or PAPR if in case you're using, and should keep the battery for charge if in case it's a PAPR with us. And then we have to wear the new cap and gloves outside the NT room. In the follow-up phase, the takeover is always done by the floor nurse, and then she enters the records and informs the nurse in charge that the procedure has finished. The cleaning and the packing of the instruments should be done for this for the SSD thing, and then we have to keep the used PAPR for proper designation and charge batteries. And then the supplementations of the used consumable items should be done for the next OR, and all its staff involved must shower after the case. So there's a small list of preparation which should be done. Let me admit. Okay, this is a small list of preparation which has to be done for the purpose of final disinfection. So the medical waste shall be disposed of as COVID-19 related medical waste. And then reusable medical devices shall be disinfected according to the disinfectant procedures of the SARS-CoV-2 related usable medical devices. Medical fabrics should again be disinfected according to the protocol, and the surface of the objects like instruments and services and the devices, including devices table, operating table, should be cleaned of any visible blood or bodily fluid pollutants before disinfectant. And usually a chlorine solution of 1000 milligram per liter active chlorine should be used to wipe the surfaces to make it clean. Well, one size cannot fit all feet, and there are a lot of variations inside the OTs which are available in Nepal. Hence, it is very much important for us to understand as to what all things are available. So this session is over as such from my side, and we are open for any comments and suggestions. So let me first see the chat. Okay, so Dr. Nikunj, Dr. Gopal has said about how prepared are we to operate a positive patient. Well, this is a very good question. Well, Gopal should be aware that teaching hospital has been designated as a level 3 hospital, so they will definitely have very severe cases coming up to them in the first hand if in case the situations of this pandemic deteriorates in Nepal. Henceforth, we have to get ready, and we cannot say that we are not ready. We have to really prepare ourselves as soon as possible and as ideal for situation as possible. Any other questions? Well, I'm trying to unmute all of you, and yeah.
Hello? Hello?
Yes, Krishna Bhai, also, you are audible also.
Okay. Thank you very much, Amit. I mean, your hard work to prepare all this presentation, which gave us an overall view how we should be uh, preparing for operation, what kind of operation we're supposed to do, as well as I think we'll have to, the only one who is speaking should keep the mic. I think others have to mute the mic. Hello?
सर
Everybody,
I'm
yeah.
muting all of them.
जसले बोलिरहेछ उहाँले मात्रै चाहिँ के अरे म्युट अफ गरौँ, अरूले चाहिँ म्युटमै राखौँ होला। त्यो भयो भने सायद साउन्ड क्लियर सुनिन्छ होला। राइट। अब अमितले चाहिँ गाइडलाइन्सहरू दिनुभयो। आई थिङ्क इट इज एट द प्रेजेन्ट सिनेरियो क्वाइट डिफिकल्ट टु इम्प्लिमेन्ट. देयर आर टु थिङ्स आई अन्डरस्ट्यान्ड. हेलो
Hello, हजुर भन्नुहोस् न. You're audible हजुर.
एउटा कुरा चाहिँ इन वाट केसेस सुड वी बी patient, and we have to ensure the safety of yourself, safety of the patient, as well as the safety of the whole staff in the operation theater as well as the hospital. So I think with these two things in mind, since most of the surgeons are the leader of that particular case, so the whole decision lies in our hand. So we have to be very, very careful when we say yes or no and how we do it. Are there any questions to Amit?
Well, Krishna Bhai, while you were speaking, your audio got mute. So I don't think so that the 2 points which you were mentioning was audible to the participants here. So can you please repeat those 2 points again?
Yeah, one thing is what this in this present circumstances, what are the cases we'll be taking up for surgery? What are the cases we should accept, and what are the cases we do not operate now and give other kinds of conservative management, and also try to give the shortest, maybe less operative, more conservative way of doing. I was attending one spine conference yesterday, and the speakers were from Korea and Japan, and they were all going into minimal invasive and OPD procedures. So the exposure is less, the hospital stay is minimum. So probably since surgeons are the leaders of any particular operation, it is the whole sole responsibility of the surgeon to decide to operate or not to operate, or how you approach this. So I think selecting the patient in this present scenario is very, very important. And secondly, of course, all the points Amit has mentioned, of course, these are ideal ones and not possible to implement everything. But again, in keeping the safety of the patient, the doctor, the operating team in the hospital, we have to make the proper preparation. And I think people will not support you if you operate the patient and people get infected. They will always say why you operated. So I think we are on the receiving side, so we have to be careful when we decide to operate. Thank you. And I think Praveen, are you there? Okay.
No, I don't think so. Praveen Doksab is here. So if I can, may I request any of the participants here to please send the link again to Dr. Praveen. Manish is here. So Manish, can you do this? Can you send a link again, which I have circulated on Viber, and help him to connect to this group again? So, well, the points which you...
Yes, sir.
Yeah, please do that. So, Dr. Krishna, thank you for your comments, and this is well taken. Well, this is a very difficult scenario, and henceforth we have to come up to a challenge here. Well, I'm not saying that all the OR should be negatively pressurized and every infrastructure should be changed overnight. That is impossible. Even in America, they are not being able to do that. Even in India, they are not being able to doing that. But then what we can do is basic minimum. The basic minimum is to change our attitude to deal with this patient. First of all, we have to come out of this anxiety that we cannot manage. People have been managing it, and we can also manage it in a safer way. Only implicating that we do not have a proper OR, we do not have a proper infrastructure, will lead to disaster, because there will definitely be neurosurgical emergency coming up. We do not know, because of the lack of all these tests, whether a patient is positive or negative. Henceforth, I have taken this challenge to start with the most complicated scenario, because other than that, we can always make a balanced view of everything. But then in the most challenging scenario would be that if you have a COVID-19 positive patients, what to do in that scenario. So in that scenario, if in case we can make up our arrangements, then we can definitely come up to a place where we can negotiate and can balance the patients who are COVID suspect or may not be COVID suspect, but then because of the lack of testing, we do not know whether these patients can have COVID. So in that scenario, we have to take all these sorts of universal precautions. So if you have seen these slides, most of the things talk about the basic things rather than the major scenarios. So that's why I have actually kept this lamp sign or these slides, which are only for explanatory purpose, limited to those scenarios where there are a lot of discussion going on, like the modification of OR and then need of PAPR or need of respirators, because these are something which are not very easily available. So N95 mask is good enough. We have to try to change our protocols of using drills. We have to use as much as possible either a Hudson brace or a bone ronger or a Kerrison punch to the maximum, so that we can avoid the drills, and try to keep suctioning on. So rather than using a single suction, try to keep 2 suctions inside the field. Try to decrease the use of vaporizing elements like cautery to the minimum, and do not do any endonasal procedures at this moment of time. And then as what the topics which I was talking about regarding the management of the OR shifting, and then how the OR should be built. So that is something which we can actually achieve in the shortest moment of time, rather than dedicating lots of time on how to change the air duct system inside the theater. That is impossible to achieve. Well, there are a lot of questions coming
Amit,
up.
thank you very much. Just one comment on Dr. Roka had written that the hospital administration must be aware of all these. But we all have realized that it's us, every neurosurgeon who is operating, have to take all the precaution. The hospital administration are usually, most of them will be just watching what we do and trying to avoid all the blames. So I think we have to be careful ourselves on selecting the patients under the circumstances. I think our session
Just to
is
add to
till
you,
5 o'clock.
Dr. Krishna, sorry to interrupt you. Well, what you have said is very right. It is up to us, and as a society also, if we can come up with all these recommendations, and if we can pass it through the Nepal Medical Council, it becomes mandatory for all the hospital administrators to arrange these devices, or to make this arrangement as soon as possible in their hospitals to conduct neurosurgical services. Well, this is absolutely important. What is happening is that all these protocols which we are bombarded with are being set up in outside countries where they have a lot of resources. Even to an extent that we are being told about what is AANS doing, what is SBNS doing, and what is CDC guidelines are, but then there is no protocols for our country. So if in case we can make a protocol like this from our society, put it through the Nepal Medical Council, it becomes mandatory for all the hospital administrator to do that. Yes, sir. Please continue.
I think it's important. The last part, like we have discussed and we've all realized. Now we make a probably report and submit to Nepal Medical College, because nobody's going to listen to us directly. But if it comes through the Nepal Medical College, it's a government body. So I think this becomes more effective. And
Yes, you're
I
right.
thank Amit for this beautiful presentation. And I urge and request all neurosurgeons, especially the senior ones with a lot of cases, lot of experiences, may not be related to the COVID one, maybe anything which is pertinent to this one. For example, now we are free, we can write papers. So maybe somebody can organize a lecture on how to write papers, how to organize a research paper, what are the things. Those kind of thing also would be very, very useful, as well as what we are in the free time, what we can do. Thank you very much. Thank you all,
Well, Dr.
friends.
Krishna, sorry, there are a lot of questions in the chat box I can see. Dr.
Yeah.
Nukunj is saying that hospital is not ready to buy PPE and 95 masks. Well, this should be a thing which we have to be very much assuring. Or rather, we should be actually asking the hospital. Until unless we do not have a PPE and N95, please, no services from the doctors. It doesn't make any point to expose yourself and be a super spreader later on. Then Dr. Nikunj again is asking any idea of PAPR. It is not PARP, it is PAPR, powered air purifier respirator. The cost of PAPR is around 7,000 to 8,000 INR, as discussed in the NSI webinar yesterday. But then it is something which is not easily available and it's very costly. I don't know hospitals can buy it, but then we can definitely make a recommendation on that. Dr. Roka is also here and he has said that's why I've given them the basics, and if they don't comply, we'll stop ER. Well, if in case we can make a protocol and come up through the Nepal Medical Council, as Dr. Krishna has said, it will be very good. And Dr. Manoj Bora has said, in emergency cases, do we use PP in all the cases? Well, in the present scenario, if the patients are not tested for COVID-19, that includes PCR, not rapid antibody test. Rapid antibody test is not at all specific for excluding the cases. And so the patient has undergone a PCR test, and then within 24 hours a 2 PCR and shows comes negative, then we can definitely go ahead with all the routine measures rather than using all the PPE. Operating in a PPE is very difficult. Putting on a PPE for around 4 hours continuous stretch is very difficult. So henceforth, PPE should be used in all those patients who do not have a testing done, and if we have a slight suspicion that these patients may have COVID-19. Then should we treat all as COVID suspect? Manoj is asking again. Yes, we should treat all as COVID suspect until unless you have fair good reasons for not suspecting COVID in these patients. Fair good reasons are that patients does not have any symptoms of COVID-19 in these cases, then you can go ahead. But then a recent study which has been published has quoted that almost 50% patients may be asymptomatic. So that is something which is very challenging. But this particular study has come from those places where there's a massive local transmission. In Nepal, till date, there's only one case who has been identified out of local transmission. So we can play a safe, but then still we should not take any chances. So that is from me. And Krishna Doctor, do you have anything else to add? Sorry, you are again muted.
Thank you very much, Amit. I think it's such a wonderful program. I think we should continue, and I would request volunteers to prepare for the next presentation like this. I think once every week would be fine, I think, because it takes time to prepare also. But if somebody wants to do it before that, that is also welcome. If it's possible, if you can kindly inform in the Viber group and inform me separately, I think we can coordinate. Sunday would be, I think, a nice idea. But the timing, is it okay? 4 to 5 for everybody?
Well, it's okay with me.
Hello.
Well, Gopal is also here, I think. Gopal has raised his hand for something in the past, but then he removed his hand. Gopal, I'm unmuting you. Do you want to say anything?
Gopal, hello. Gopal? I think Amit will end here, and we'll do the rest in the correspondence and finalize for the next session.
Yeah,
Okay.
from the chat box
Bye bye,
also, most
friends.
of the people
Thank you
have
very
said
much.
Sunday 5 p.m. is good. Okay, thank you.
Okay,
5
Amit, thank you.
p.m. or 4 p.m.
Sunday 4 p.m.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Bye bye.
Okay, thank
Take
you.
care.
Bye bye.